Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Callie, and I know it's really late, but I have my top 5 reads from August and my wrap up, stats. So in August, I read a total of 28 books, which was a lot, totaling 7,888 pages. I listened to a total of 103 hours and 10 minutes of audiobook. Now, I do listen to my audiobooks on 1.8 to 2 point speed, so that's not entirely accurate. But that's just the blanket length of all the audiobooks that I did listen to. I did DNF 6 books in August. For formats, I read 14 physical copies, 5 ebooks, and 9 audiobooks. Really heavy on the audiobooks in August. I use Scribd and Libby, and I just sort of scour them for anything that's on my TBR. That way I can still get through my TBR while I'm at work, because we are now back in the office, so I can't just read on my lunch break, even though I do bring a book to work every day. But while I'm working, I'll listen to an audiobook of either something that's on my TBR, if I could find the audiobook, or a Polycon, or just random romance book that I want to listen to. I ended up only reading 3 genres in the month of August, and the most was romance. Read a lot of romance in August, with a total of 14, and then 10 fantasy books, and then 4 sci-fi books. So mainly fantasy and romance, but a lot of subgenres I was working with, and I have all 3 represented with my favorite books for the month. So the first one was actually the series that I reread for the month of August, which was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Of the 3 books, I still think book 1 is my favorite because it sets up our world and the war and all of the conflict so seamlessly. Everything fits into a perfect puzzle, and I really liked how raw and realistic this is. We're following Rin, a young woman whose really only prospects is to become a wife and bear her husband children. She wants absolutely nothing to do with that. So she takes this huge prestigious test that people spend their entire lives preparing for. Imagine the ACT or SAT, but on steroids. And if you score within, I think it's the highest 1 to 5% in the test, you get accepted into the one academy that is free, which is the big war general academy. It's called Singard. And of course, she ends up being able to do that in the span of a year. She starts studying a year before the test and gets into Singard. And she is darker than a lot of the people, a lot of the nobles. Their children are attending Singard. And this whole story spans over, I think, 5 or 6 years. Book 1 itself, I believe, is 2 to 3 years. Rin is an abrasive and unlikable main character. And she is brash. She has no impulse control. But she has this strategist mind that is so fascinating to watch in this story. And you also watch her devolve very fast. Not even very fast. All 3 books, she devolves in a different manner. And I think the series overall, I gave 5 stars. I think I gave this one 5 stars. Book 2 and book 3, I gave 4.5. Just because I did have to put this book, all 3 of them, down for a good day or so, just because they are so dark and raw and gritty, and R.F. Kuang was not afraid to go into the realistic consequences of war. And she gets very gruesome and very detailed in that aspect, which can be very hard to read. But along with all this war, we also have an opium crisis, hence the Poppy War. And there's also magic, along with all of this strategy, and everything weaves so seamlessly. I think the best in this first book, which is why I picked this one for my favorite of the entire series. Flipping from picking a first book, I have a final book on this list, and that is Aurora's End by Amie Kaufman. And J. Kristoff. This is the final book in the Aurora cycle, which follows a ragtag team in the Aurora Legion, who they find this girl out of time. She's been frozen for 200 and some years. Everyone else on her ship is dead, and when she explains her story, she says she was traveling to this planet that doesn't exist. And this team of ragtag Aurora Legionnaires decide to believe her, and they are thrust into this story of good and evil that is as old as time itself. And I adored this whole series. All 3 of these books, 5 stars. I just happened to read Aurora's End this month. I listened to the audiobook for all 3 of these, and I would highly recommend. It is a full cast audiobook. Phenomenal. I had to just stop and stare at a wall during the last hour and a half of this book, just sobbing, tears, so many tears. But this series is so well executed. It has everything. It has fun spaceship wars. It has many different species coming together for peace, coming together for war. And we have all of the favorite tropes that everyone sees, and I adored every aspect of this sci-fi adventure. Moving to one of the romances that I adored this month, I have Twisted Lies by Huang. This is the final book in the Twisted series, and we are following Christian and Stella. Now, Stella is the social media influencer of the group of friends in the Twisted series, and Christian owns a computer security firm. And when Stella has this really weird stalker experience, Christian offers his services to her in security, later other services. And he then also says that they can do a fake dating to get her social media to get some more traction, as she has kind of hit this lull and she wants to start designing for her own brand. And in order to do that, she needs to prove that she can keep momentum up in the social media atmosphere. So they do this really cute fake dating thing with just only on social media and in the normal paparazzi media, all while Christian's trying to figure out who's stalking Stella. I adored this. It's Twisted Lies for a reason. Christian's obviously hiding a ton of stuff within this story. It is dual perspective, so you do get both Stella and Christian, but I adored this. The thing that I think I loved the most of this was the ending. Now, of course, it's a romance, so there's a happily ever after. It is needed for the genre. It's not a secret, not a spoiler. It's to be labeled a romance book, it has to have a happily ever after. Now, a happily ever after is in the eye of the beholder, so take that in mind. But we also get a glimpse of all of the twisted couples 4 years after the events of this book, which was probably my favorite thing about this book, besides Christian and Stella. I still think Bridget and Reese are my favorite couple. Christian and Stella are a close second. But I adored this series, and I'm really glad that Huang is coming out with a new series called Kings of Wrath, which follows a couple we do meet in this book, which means we may still see more of the twisted couples, and I love her romances. They are, while yes, they are technically contemporary romances, they are a tad dark, as usually one of the main couple is into some seedy shit, and it's just a fun and wild ride. I absolutely adored all of the Twisted series, would highly recommend them. And I'm slowly collecting the physical copies of them. So currently I have Twisted Lies and I have Twisted Hate in physical copies. But I'm obsessed with this series. Just obsessed. The next one is another romance that I adored, and that is My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey. This was a romance with a murder mystery plot. Now, this book is not that big. You can also see all of my tabs. I tabbed this book a lot. We're following Taylor and Miles. Taylor is on a vacation with her brother, trying to get away from the monotony of their lives, when a dead body is found in their Airbnb. Now, Miles is a PI, and he is tasked with trying to figure out who killed this guy, and Taylor listens to a lot of true crime podcasts and keeps finding little things right before Miles does, which infuriates him to no end. And of course, it's a romance, so they start to fall for each other. and it's a lot of fun. Now, I was in this for the romance. I honestly could not care less about the murder mystery. I guessed who it was about halfway through the book. So the murder mystery part was not the strong suit, but the romance was so good. I adored Taylor and Miles. I reread snippets of this book all the time whenever I'm sad, because it's just that much fun. Again, this is a dual POV. I am a sucker for a dual perspective romance. I love seeing both perspectives. I love being in the both of the minds of the protagonists, and this is no different. This showcases the exact reason. If we didn't have Miles's perspective, I don't think this book would have been as good. So, highly recommend this if you're a Tessa Bailey fan, because I adored every second of it. The last book that I have for my top 5 is The Darkening by Sunya. This book surprised me. When I read the synopsis, which is you're following a couple of different characters, talking to a prince, and you're talking about a young woman who is in hiding with her father, trying to help other refugees from this magical, mythical storm thing that is constantly attacking this country city. It sounded like, almost like Shadow and Bone with the Rift, I think is what it's called. It's been a while since I've read it. So it kind of sounded like that. However, it was so different from what I'm used to. They were all morally good characters. The storm had a really interesting aspect. It was this huge, I envisioned it like this huge tornado that kind of ebbed and flowed around this area, but it had like shadow demon animals that came ahead of it, and those were our big fight scenes, which were really interesting. And then our prince has this cool like feathered light magic, which was really interesting. But the coolest part was the magic system itself, which was based off of words. It was almost like spells, but it was based off of a language that was constantly changing and had to be experimented and almost made up, which was really cool because our main character's father is almost like he dubs himself the creator of this magic, and he tells his daughter, like, no matter what happens to me, take my book of how to and never let it get into anyone's hands, especially the royalty, because the royalty were also really interesting because when you ascended to the throne, you were embodied by the original king, and you just no longer became who you were. So our prince is terrified of losing himself because he has watched his mother, who is the current monarch, lose herself, and he lost a parent, essentially, because of this weird curse thing. And all of this sounds like a lot of disjointed, but nothing about this was disjointed. I loved the writing. I loved the characters. I'm so excited about the rest of this series. I have no idea if it's duology, trilogy. I don't even care. I am just so invested in this story, and I'm invested in Dalka. Dalka and Vesper's relationship, which is a stretch to call it a relationship, but their relationship is just some of the best banter and just tension. And not even necessarily romantic. It's just, it had a very rivals. They kept trying to outdo each other. They kept trying to see who could go further into the storm. There was a lot going on, and everything about it weaved amazingly into this story, and I adored it. I will occasionally read, again, you can't really tell with this one. I have a bunch of tabs. I've been tabbing my books a lot more recently with almost every book I've read. Pretty proud of that because I used to start tabbing and then give it up. But I've been tabbing a lot more, and I will go back to passages within this book that I've tabbed just because it's so fascinating to me, and I adore all of these characters and the story. So that's gonna be it for my August wrap up. I know it's a little bit late, but I recently got COVID for the first time, so I had to push out some of my videos so that I could film, because I didn't have a voice for a while. So that was fun, but much better now. Definitely getting more back into reading. I did do audiobooks for a while, just because like looking at a page made my head hurt while I was sick. So I got through a ton of audiobooks that way. But nonetheless, that's going to be it for today's video. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, with the occasional Sunday. And I will see you guys in our next video. Bye!